Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BFI Film Academy's January Lab. My name is Alex, and I'm the Film Academy Festival and Events Manager. And today, we'll teach you about navigating through your post-festival distribution options for your short films. The session will be hosted by Nicole Davis, who is a producer, writer, and podcaster, and who works at the BFI as the BFI Network Officer for Film Hub Southeast. Nicole will introduce you to our lovely guest tonight. But just before I hand over to her, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how the session today will run. So my colleagues Jen and Sarah will be managing the chat box today. So please feel free to say hi, like Matthew and Joyce have done, and ask us any BFI questions, any Film Academy questions, any question about our labs, or questions about our upcoming Future Film Festival in the chat box. And please make sure that you select or everyone when you are typing in the chat box rather than just host and panelists, which is kind of the default thing that Zoom gives you when you first log into Zoom. If you do decide to use the chat box, can I please ask you to be respectful to our guests today and also be kind to each other. Please don't use offensive language in the chat box, and please don't share any personal information there either. And for those of you who haven't seen it, we shared our code of conduct for our digital events in the ticketing email that was sent to you. And Jen will shortly post that in the chat box as well. If you would like to network with each other and share your projects with each other, then we've set up a Facebook networking group just for that. Jen again will post the link in the chat box shortly to that Facebook networking group. Please feel free to join it and share your projects, portfolios there, network with each other and find collaborators for your projects, hopefully. If you have any questions for our participants tonight, so for our panelists or for Nicole, then those questions go in the Q&A box, which you can see on the bottoms of your screens. And we will devote the last 15 minutes of the session to your questions. My colleagues, George and Sarah, will be managing that, but please feel free to pop your questions, start popping them now in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get through as many as we can at the end of the session. And the only other thing left to say is that today's session will be recorded, and we are going to put the recording up on the BFI YouTube channel later on this week. So if you miss anything today, or if you just want to watch the session again, don't worry, you will be able to. And that's all for me. Now I'm going to hand over to Nicole, who will be hosting today's event for you. Enjoy.
Thanks, Alex, and hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Davis, and I'm hosting tonight's session all about how to extend the life of your short film beyond its premiere. This is the perfect time to be considering this question, especially for those of you who might have films at the BFI Future Film Festival, which is running from the 18th to the 21st of February. I'm really thrilled to be joined by 4 expert guests in the form of Isra Al-Kassi, a programmer and co-founder of Tape Collective. Hello, Isra. Catherine Lynn Scott, a publicist and founder of London Flair PR. Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Rob Monday, the managing editor of Short of the Week. Hi, Rob.
Hi, everyone.
And last but not least, Katie McCullough, founder of Festival Formula. Hello, Katie.
Hello, everyone.
Hello to you all. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for spending your Monday evening with me. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I want to start off today's session with a couple of kind of general questions about audiences, particularly in relation to short films, as they are obviously vital to this process of getting your film seen and getting it out there. So this is to the group. What does an audience for a short film look like? Who out there watches short films? Don't all go at once. Katie, you seem like you're on the verge of saying something.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because every film festival has a very different film audience, and that can be down to where it's located, or its remit, or its genre it's looking to, or just even duration of film. But I think an audience for short film is any film lover, really. I think, you know, some of the best projects or best filmmakers started off making short content and, you know, fleshing out their talent before kind of moving on to longer form or series format. So it's anyone, really. I mean, I think it's be hard pushed to find anyone who doesn't like short film. The only thing I will say is I think the term short film has changed a lot in the last kind of 5 years, because anyone who's been doing this a long time short film really was just short film that you only ever saw at a festival. Whereas now I think people, they make short form content to be drunk online, to kind of, short form content and branded content. So it's changed, I think, a lot of the years.
And I just want to add to that as well, thanks Katie, that I think the audience is also changing a lot over the years with after the festival, and I will talk about that a bit. Just, like aeroplanes now pick up a lot of short films and you can watch them there, and the BBC and other programs are way more open to shorts than they ever were, and lots of TV channels all over Europe, take the content to HBO, Netflix. So I think that it really is a changing market, and it's taken much more seriously than it ever was before.
Isra, Rob, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what's already been said. It's a very kind of broad audience for short film. I could give you some really boring stats about the analytics from Short of the Week, but I don't think you really want to hear them. Our audience is very spread. So we have, our biggest kind of portion of audience is actually people around 18 to 24, but we have, people all the way up to much older ages as well. So we have a fair split in terms of age. Even my 74-year-old dad loves to watch short films whenever he can. Always sends me little reviews of the films that he's watched. I think he just wants to be on the site, to be honest. Our audience is global, all over the world, and obviously, I think whereas obviously festivals offer that very concentrated, devoted audience where they are to local people, obviously online has the global aspect built in. So we have audiences from, India's our second biggest audience, and then we have audiences from all around the world. So yeah, it is very broad. It is always growing, and I think people just love short film because you can get all the kind of emotional reaction and enjoyment you would from a feature just in a fraction of the time. I mean, who wouldn't love that?
No, absolutely. And Isra, I'll come to you with the next question, which is, at what stage would you advise filmmakers to kind of start thinking about their audience? Maybe they've got an idea for a short film. Is that an apt time to start thinking about who might want to see that film?
Yeah, I think about this quite often because I'm not a filmmaker at all, but obviously work with filmmakers quite a lot, and I'm very much sort of exhibition audience focused. All I ever think about is who's actually watching this, because I'm sometimes worried about the fact that we're just sort of putting things on and not really thinking about who's watching it. But I had a friend recently send me her treatment, and I sent her a timeline of festival submissions and audience and cinemas and distributors, and she said, I'm not there yet. And so I think I can completely understand in terms of why filmmakers might not feel ready to have that conversation with themselves while they're making the work, while they're creating, because they just want to sort of finish the product and focus on that. But I really would sort of recommend that people have a think about it while they're making it. Of course, it depends on what the output is. If you feel like there's a story that you really have to tell and you're doing it in a really lo-fi way and you're doing it for yourself, that's fine. You don't have to worry about where it goes, and you don't have to sort of think too much about where it's going or who you have to sort of contact and schmooze. But if it's a film that you're looking to actually, be in festivals and have sort of a longer life cycle, then you definitely need to know where you can position it, but also more importantly, where it can go. Because as much as we're sort of talking about the future of short films and that there's loads of different places it can go, it's still quite restricted in terms of in venue spaces or in, short film programs, as opposed to short films that are available to watch. So I would suggest trying to think about that quite early on.
Absolutely. And I mean, today's panel discussion is all about kind of beyond the festival circuit strategy, but I just want to kind of lay the foundation with some questions about what that festival circuit strategy should look like. So Katie, I'm going to come to you first for a bit of context on how exactly filmmakers should tackle the festival circuit. You're founder of Festival Formula, who act as a sort of, I guess, shepherd or midwife for a short film, and you're all about tailored bespoke strategies. So can you speak about the benefit of that targeted approach when it comes to submitting to festivals? Why shouldn't you just throw your film to every festival going?
Yeah, I like the term midwife. I'm going to use that.
You can have it.
Yeah, so I think we're always key to get filmmakers to understand where their audience is, because I think that can filter into where you spend your submission fee budget on submitting to festivals. The reason why you shouldn't just grab the BAFTA and the Academy list and just blitz it is because every festival has its own flavour. And also, you know, some of those festivals are perhaps not best suited for your film. So, you know, we get a lot of filmmakers that will want to submit to those big shiny festivals that they've heard of, but they're the kind of level of festivals that even if you're not in film, your mum and your dad have heard of because it's Cannes or it's Berlinale. But they have very particular tastes. So I kind of feel that everyone's strategy should be understanding the strengths and weaknesses of their own film. And when we say a weakness, we don't necessarily mean bad. We mean that your film isn't what that festival is after. So you might have, I know, screwball comedy. And, you know, that means that you're probably not going to be looking at Locarno because they're wanting something a little bit more highbrow or, you know, a bit more energetic and drama led. So it definitely benefits from having a strategy. It's a lot of research, but I think that any filmmaker who wants to work in film needs to know that it's time that you have to take to kind of research and look at festivals and understand, like, why are you spending money to submit there? That's probably the easiest, most basic way of putting it, because a lot of people just kind of go, I don't have the time, I'm just going to submit everywhere. But the problem is sometimes you can ruin a really good opportunity for a premiere at a festival because you haven't read the rules and regulations. And I don't want any filmmaker spending money that they can't get back. So I think it pays to have a strategy. Even if that strategy is working out, okay, I've only got, you know, X amount of money to spend on submission fees, that's a start, because it will inform where you spend it. And festivals aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily cheap, but they're not necessarily expensive. I've been doing this 17 years now, and, you know, 10 years ago, it used to be 50 quid a pop. But we have fewer festivals and we have fewer filmmakers. But now, you know, we have a lot of festivals, too many festivals, and a lot of filmmakers. So it pays to work out how much money you've got and where you're going to spend it, because that is your budget. That's, you know, your opportunity to really stretch it and try and hit as many best suited festivals as you can, because that benefits your work. What you don't want to do is just go, yeah, I'm going to submit to all the big ones, because more than often it's a rejection. So it's easier just to kind of, you know, maneuver around that obstacle and just go, right, I'm submitting to this festival because they are after my film, and that might be genre or flavor or particular remit, and that's a lot better. Even that's the smallest strategy. I mean, you can go into, you know, deeper stuff, but that from a basic level, how much money you've got and looking at those festivals is where you can start.
I'm seeing a lot of chat in the chat about Film Freeway being the kind of go-to platform for festival knowledge. You know, you can categorize everything by sort of like genre and location. Are there any other sites like you would recommend to help people strategize or find out about different types of festivals?
Yeah, I mean, Film Freeway is the most aesthetically pleasing. It's not 100% perfect. It still kind of has some quirks in there. But I would say other festival platforms to look at Fest Home, look at Short Film Depot. If you have a French production or French speaking film, look at Film Fest platform. That is just French festivals to submit to. The other thing to say is not every festival is listed on a submission platform. So I mentioned some of the big ones earlier, like Locarno and Venice and Berlinale and Cannes, and even BFI. You know, they're on their own websites. They're not actually on a submission platform. So I think the best thing to do is use Film Freeway as a place to research, but not necessarily use it as a one-stop shop, because it is a bit like Amazon. You can just kind of get click crazy and spend a lot of money very quickly.
Yeah, very good advice. And then is there a certain amount of time once a film has had its festival premiere where you would consider it, I mean, dead in the water is probably a bit too strong, but perhaps, you know, past its sell-by date, or is it quite flexible as to how long you can kind of keep submitting your short film to these festivals?
So, I mean, it used to be 2 years. You could get kind of really good, healthy traction on the festival circuit for 2 years. But now I'd probably say it's about 18 months in terms of festivals that are worth it. You know, you can find festivals that don't really have a production year stipulation, that their rule of thumb is if we haven't seen it, we don't care if you made it 10 years ago, but there aren't too many of them. And I think the benefit of this kind of panel is I feel filmmakers should be using it as a stepping stone for something else. So, you know, it's not just do or die, you've got to light up the circuit and then that's it. We've had clients that have done very well on the circuit, and then when they've gone online or sold, it's not as fruitful, but then also vice versa. So I think it's not tying yourself up for too long, but at the same time, and I see a lot of people do this now, is step onto a competitive circuit, start submissions to festivals, and then about 3 months later kind of go, I'm going to put it online. And you have to be very conscious that some festivals don't want you to have your content online, and if you've already submitted your monies, you're not necessarily going to get them back. So I think it's understanding that what you're going to do and how it impinges on both those things.
Totally. And we'll come on to kind of online distribution and some of the nuances there alongside submitting to festivals. But finally, I'd love to know if there's a number of festivals or laurels on your poster that filmmakers should kind of be like aiming for. And, once you've hit that, you can kind of move on, or is it not as quantifiable as that?
It should be quality, not quantity. So our rule of thumb is, the laurels that are on your poster should speak on your film's behalf and you as a creative. And what you want is you want festivals that are recognizable. You want festivals to show that you know your audience. So, for example, if you have a short documentary that deals with human rights, if you've got a human rights specific festival laurel, then somebody will go, they know their audience. You might have a documentary specific festival, but then you might have a British bespoke festival as well. So it's best to kind of think of it in terms of what can I show off to people about my film before they've spoken to me or watched the film, to kind of put them in a good stead. It's much better to have fewer festivals that mean a lot more than have a whole poster full of festivals that anyone in the industry, as soon as they look even closer, they're just going to go, I don't know this festival, or it doesn't translate. And also that kind of goes for a lot of the monthly festivals as well, like they're kind of 10 a penny, and they don't necessarily have as much impact as a yearly edition festival where you've kind of fought for your selection. But yeah, quality, not quantity.
Yeah, write that down. And then one to the group is kind of what comes next. You've had your festival run, you've had a glitzy premiere, hopefully. What are you thinking is the next priority for your film? Is it straight to online distribution and bagging that premiere, or is there something else that you should be considering in the interim? That's to anyone who wants to take it.
I mean, it's not totally our area of expertise, but having worked with many short films, I always think it's possible, if it's possible, to get a good distributor who of course they're inundated with films, but if you've got a good film, you've got a good chance of getting one. So maybe researching some of the shorts distributors, and if you get picked up by one, there's a chance of selling your film and making some money from it and getting some money back. Of course, that doesn't always mean it's going to be a lot of money. It just depends where they sell. But I think if you've had a really good festival run and you've got a quality project, and it's something that would appeal to the masses as such, then I think there's a way to go on and have your film on for a longer life of the film after the festival circuit.
And then does anyone want to back that up or counter that?
I guess I'd just say it depends on what you're aiming for with your film. Katie kind of touched on this a minute ago, but it's about kind of doing your research and knowing what your aims are for the film. So don't do anything you're going to regret later. If you're at the end of your festival run and all your aims are just to reach the biggest audience possible, now you just want to get your film seen, then obviously you can go straight online. If you're looking for an agent or funding for your next project, you might want to time that slightly differently. If I was going to put my short film online and I was looking for funding for my next project, I'd put it online as the same time I do my next Kickstarter campaign or whatever it is you're using to crowdfund. So I think it really does depend on what your aims are from your film and what you want to do with it next. So I don't think there's one easy answer for everyone. It really does depend on the individual case and just recognizing as a filmmaker what you want from that project.
Yeah, absolutely. No one size fits all. I'm seeing lots of questions about who are short film distributors in the chat box. Catherine, I know you mentioned kind of some of the places that, and Rob, you did as well, like Netflix and HBO, and there are lots of kind of big shiny names out there.
Netflix do a competition, I believe, to get onto Netflix for shorts. I mean, I couldn't list them all. What Media are really good. They're in Canada. Salah Morissette's really good there in Europe. But I don't have a list of them all. You just have to do some research and do take a bit of time to have a look, and also see what they have. A lot of the distributors take on previous Oscar nominees or Oscar shorts or Oscar winning films, so you have to check that your film is ready for that. And but you can always submit it. They can always say no or yes, you never know.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably like wise to look at other award winners and see if they've been distributed and by who. And then coming on to online distribution, they're quite a big deal for short films these days, to have that online premiere, to make that splash. It can really give a boost to views to kind of be selected or have that spotlight put on your film. Rob, I want to come to you as managing editor of Short of the Week. It holds a fair amount of prestige to be picked for that, if I do so myself. Can you speak a little bit about your curation process, how competitive it is, and if you can define it, what it is that you're looking for?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thanks for the kind words. It's very nice. It's always good to hear. So in terms of our curation, yeah, I mean, it is really competitive. And, I don't want to say that to be disheartening. I'm just trying to be very honest here. We had over 3,000 submissions to Short of the Week last year, and we only featured 233 films. So, you can do the maths from that, basically. And I mean, submissions aren't our only avenue for films. We also work with distributors. We attend festivals. We do outreach ourselves. So there's a lot of different kind of areas where we're getting our curation from. Submissions is a large part of it, but it's not our only part of it. And there's a lot of competition, a lot of short films being made, a lot of short films to be watched. And yeah, in terms of what our curation is looking for, we have kind of a checklist that we kind of work to. It's not like a strict checklist that we say every film has to hit exactly what's on this list, but it's a good kind of indicator of what we're looking for. And to give you a kind of idea of what that is, kind of our top priority is originality. So we're strong believers that short film offers a certain type of freedom that's not really found in other areas of filmmaking. You don't have the restrictions really of studio productions, big budgets and stuff like that. So there's often a lot of freedom to tell stories that haven't been told before, and to kind of try out new production techniques that wouldn't be maybe given a chance in bigger productions because they'd be seen as too risky. So originality plays a key. So we're looking for our filmmakers to really use the format to show us something new, to surprise us, and just kind of wow us with what they can do. Along similar kind of lines, new voices are really important. Again, so short film offers an opportunity for stories to be told that wouldn't be told anywhere else. Short film is very much seen as kind of the beginning path in a filmmaker's journey. And if these stories can't be told in short film, and if these voices can't be heard in short film, what chance do they have of being heard on the bigger platforms? Short film feeds television, short film feeds feature film, short film feeds all areas of filmmaking. So if these voices and these stories aren't getting the opportunity here, then they're not really going to get the opportunity elsewhere. So new voices are really important to us. Obviously, like any type of filmmaking, you want to have some kind of emotional reaction. If it doesn't give you some kind of emotional reaction, whether that's to, scare the living hell out of you, or make you wet your pants with laughter, whatever it is, you need to have some kind of emotional reaction. That's what really gets an audience engaged. That's what really gets an audience to want to share that film, and helps it get seen by others. And then kind of, I suppose, a kind of smaller point is that it needs to be suitable for online. A lot will be said about the difference between the world of festivals and online, and an online audience is different from a festival audience. A festival audience is in that nice warm theatre, big screen, surround sound. They're shut in. It would usually take a lot for a festival audience to get up and leave a theatre, whereas online someone might very quickly just quit a film or skip out to whatever else they do online. So films, we tend to look for films that move a little bit quicker, have a good, strong early hook that really get someone engaged early on and make them want to kind of continue watching.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And say the best case scenario happens and your film does get selected for Short of the Week. What advice can you give to filmmakers to kind of utilize that to the best that they can, to utilize that badge of honor, so to speak? Should they be emailing folks in the industry to say, look, we made it to Short of the Week, or using that laurel on their marketing?
Yeah. I mean, of course, kind of anything a filmmaker can do to help the process of spreading the word and sharing the film is just going to make the online release more of a success. We have our own contacts, we have our own network, we have our own audience, but anything you can do to kind of help that on release is just going to make it even more successful. So I guess I'd say, don't rush it, really plan it out. Quite often it's the case that people look at the online release as kind of the final step of their film's journey. And that might be, I don't know, it might be a couple of months after you made the film, or it might be 2 to 3 years after you made the film. And sometimes it can be that, by then the filmmaker's almost at the stage where they're kind of done with that film and ready to move on to the next project. Or maybe they've already moved on to the next project. So it can often be that they don't give it the necessary time that it needs and the attention that it needs. So I guess just make sure you really give it the attention it deserves. An online release can be a big thing for a filmmaker. It can get your film seen, it can get you contacts, it can help you make your next project. So make sure you give it kind of the attention it deserves. Definitely don't rush it. And try and make it feel like an event. So again, often filmmakers just might have an old screener online, that's like 2 years old, and their definition of an online release is just to remove that password and make that screener live. But it doesn't feel like a release. It doesn't feel like an event. It's just a kind of afterthought. So again, you need to make it kind of feel like an event. Make it feel like this is something that someone must watch, and finding yourself an online release partner like Short of the Week can help with that. But even if you are doing it yourself, again, just make sure you make it feel like an event. What else? You can use any festival kind of buzz you built up to your advantage. So again, like Katie was saying earlier, think about what laurels you're going to put on your thumbnails. Think about the synopsis and the description you write. What can you do to really sell your film to an audience to make them watch it? And then, finally, I'd say just use your network to your advantage as well. So whether it's people you've met at festivals, whether it's festivals that have featured your film, whether it's cast, crew, friends, family, whatever it is, your whole kind of network can help you share that film. And whatever they can do to kind of share it around and help you get views will just be a real kind of advantage to having a successful online release.
To not be ashamed of kind of asking for that help.
Yeah, of course.
Isra, I want to bring you in here because Tape Collective have an online cinema platform called Good Wickedry. Can you talk to me about how you go about finding and curating films for that? Like, what are your main considerations before inviting a film to be shown on there?
Sure. I mean, Good Wickedry isn't our main activity, so it's very much something that I guess is more about the fact that we were curating so many short films programs, but that we couldn't fit anything in, and also just wanting to go back to platforming one film at a time. So it's very much about, I think what's important for us is someone who's done something great with very little. That is sort of the sort of Good Wickedry tape consensus. Like if you look at something and it's just you just go, how did you do that? That's something that we're really interested in. Because it's not a competitive platform at all, it's just that we platform a film a week. Sometimes we go on hiatus without telling anyone, sometimes there's breaks because it's not our main activity. But I think the key was, what can we do to platform this person's film, even if it's just, even if it just leads to a post on our social media channels and a few people watching a short film that they wouldn't have watched before. So there's something about, hidden gems, and there's something about beyond, this is a film that we've acquired and it's exclusive. It's actually just about a gem that you probably haven't seen this, but check it out. It's up for a week. We also sort of try to remove barriers to being platformed, because I think a lot of the reason to why filmmakers in certain films there's been situations where filmmakers and films might get rejected purely because the person who's making the decision just doesn't get it. And so there's something about good wickedry where we're removing a few barriers of people not really understanding what the film is about. So it's not, you know, we're sort of it's sort of queer leaning films. It's often films by women. It's often films by people that don't identify as white and sort of come from marginalized communities. And so it's just an added sort of element for us to be able to platform more films that we can include in our programs. And the way that we go about it is, you know, my New Year's resolution was to slow down on the Instagram scrolling, but a lot of the films were just, you know, we sort of have started veering into this, sort of goes back to what we were talking about before in terms of content and short films. There's been films that are sort of moving image and visual image, and not so, you know, traditional sort of short films, and something that's more experimental. And yeah, so it's submission based. It can be submission based, but it's also if we just spot something, or one of us will remember that there was a film a few years ago at a festival. And so it's quite fun trying to get in touch with those filmmakers again and just be like, we watched this a few years ago, we'd like to just have it up for a week. Yeah.
And then I know some plays like Short of the Week kind of covers the gamut of genres, whereas Tape Collective, perhaps it might not be fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, you have much more of a stronger curatorial focus in the sense that you do platform, you know, people of color or female filmmakers or films that have a queer story to tell. So I'm wondering if you can speak to the advantage of that. You know, why should filmmakers kind of perhaps consider leaning into that niche if they have one?
I think it goes back to sort of you know, even if it's unheard voices or whatever it may be, but it's you have an audience without having to perform. And I think the Tape audience is very specific. People sort of look at Tape and they kind of know who's following us. They know what sort of filmmakers we work with. And I think a lot of the filmmakers that we worked with, whether it's an in-person program or online, the sort of feeling has always been like, oh, I really wanted someone from my community to watch this. And I think it's being able to present your film to a community or your community where you feel sort of, because, you know, it's really important that I sort of emphasize that we're not about good or bad. We're not here to sort of add our stamp of approval or suggest that this film is better than this, or if your film isn't on there it's not good enough. But instead it's about validating the filmmakers and their films, because maybe they haven't been able to find a home for it before, and they're really great films, but it's just, you know, they've sort of struggled with maybe continuing it because it's outside the norm of short films maybe.
Absolutely, thank you. And then Rob or Katie, coming back to you briefly, maybe you can both jointly answer. What are your thoughts on straight to online? A bit like straight to DVD, but you know, for the modern age. Is that a possibility for filmmakers, you know, who don't have the budget for a festival run, or is there some kind of hybrid compromise where you can get the best of both worlds? Or, you know, is it essential to try and get your film into a festival before putting it onto the internet?
I mean, from our perspective, it varies on the film. So, for example, Rob mentioned earlier, like sometimes there are short form content that's just not really best suited for a festival. So you're looking for a forever online home, or, you know, a bit more captive audience that, you know, really kind of wants to see that content. I think for us, it's a question that we get asked a lot, but it's also a conversation that we have to have with the filmmakers, because as I mentioned earlier, some festivals do not want a film online, and they will be very explicit in their rules and regulations, which is why we always say to people, read them, because they're there and you can kind of stop yourself from wasting money. We've had it before where we've looked after music videos. Now, music videos are generally kind of made as online content anyway, or for broadcast. But what we've looked after is kind of experimental or animated music videos. So it means that it can exist on an online platform, but also go onto a competitive circuit, because that kind of form of content, like animation or experimental, is less specific when it comes to festivals in terms of premiere stipulation. But then if you take something, we looked after a really, really brilliant short documentary, and we're still looking after it now. Because I know somebody asked this question about, you know, festivals are fussy about it. it's a brilliant documentary, and it got some really brilliant, strong selections, and then it was acquired by Guardian and went online. Now, some of the festivals that came after, some very big kind of BAFTA and Academy affiliated festivals who went to select it, we then had to say to them, this now exists online. And they were very staunch, and they just said, okay, that's a shame, but we just can't, even though we've selected the film, we have to stick to our rules. So now, therefore, your film's not been selected and it's now withdrawn. So it can vary, but it really is dependent on the film and also the filmmaker and the level of expectations. Because we always say to people, you can do both. You can go online and you can do the festival circuit, but you have to understand why you're doing that and what you're trying to achieve. Because I can guarantee you, if a filmmaker wants to do both, there's always going to be a festival that they want to submit to that they don't realize you can't submit to because you're online. So you kind of have to have that foresight to kind of go, well, why am I doing this? We have it before where a filmmaker knew when they were going to go online. So either it was commission content or it was around a particular thematic day of release, like Valentine's Day or Mardi Gras, which meant that we had the lead-in time to kind of go, well, now we submit to festivals that do mind it being online, and then we submit to festivals that don't mind it being online once it's online. But you kind of have to know that kind of timeline, otherwise you can run the risk of screwing up opportunities for the film, but then also wasting money. And again, I'm so eager that filmmakers don't waste money, especially when it comes to the festival circuit.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Rob, did you have anything to add?
I mean, not massively. Katie covered it so well. It'd be really easy for me to sit here as managing editor of Short of the Week and just go, yeah, come online straight away. But to be honest, it's exactly what Katie just said. It's about knowing what you want from your film, about recognizing the opportunities and the restrictions that come with it. We actually have an article on Short of the Week, which is called Festivals and Online Eligibility. I really should know the exact name of it, the essential list of festivals and online eligibility, which will kind of run through a list of big name festivals and whether you can submit if your film is online or not. But it is just about doing your research and reading those terms and conditions. Again, like Katie has already said, just don't put yourself in a situation that you're going to regret later. Just give it real consideration.
Amazing. And then coming on to PR and publicity, Catherine, hello again. You're a publicist and the director of London Flair PR. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about the function of a publicist and what it is you can do for a short film?
Sure. I mean, we really kind of set goals with the work we do and again, it really depends on the filmmaker and their goals and what they plan to do. But essentially, our job is to really help many more people see the film. And what often happens with films, especially shorts, is sometimes you'll hear about a film and people start to talk about it, but more often than not, you don't hear about the filmmaker's name behind it. And someone's making a short, it's start their career or continue their career. And so for us, it's really about the long-term goals of getting people to know the director's name as well as the name of the film. And we do that through promotion. So when we take on a film, we would arrange, we have a massive network of press that covers shorts, and it's good to know not everyone does. And, there's also rules to that at different times, but it's about, really kind of making sure that filmmaker gets seen through articles. So we would get reviews for the films, we would interviews with the directors, whether it be on TV, radio, magazines, or online. And then the great thing about that is people can collate all the reviews, etc., that we get. And when they want to go and make their next film, they can show all of those reviews and all the articles to financiers. And it just gives them a little bit more, trust that perhaps they can give them some money. So it should really be kind of a process and a purpose. But again, as Katie and Rob has said, it really depends on the film and the filmmaker, and everyone's different. So it's looking at that filmmaker and what they need and, where we can help.
And then personally, it feels quite rare that a short film has the budget to have a publicity campaign or, someone creating that especially for you. So what does a short film have to do in order to get on your radar, and how do you go about selecting projects that you want to work on?
I don't know if it's as rare as you think. I mean, we
Right.
work with a lot of short films in festivals, but we look at it in a different way. Like you were not going to do a whole year of press on a short film. It would be a waste of their money, and who's got that money. So if we take on a film, and I'll tell you, how we do it, is we would often work with them in festivals, but it is really the top tier festivals, and not all of them. I mean, there's certain Oscar or BAFTA qualifying festivals that I know press are really keen on and really want to kind of engage in. And there's some others which are on the, BAFTA or Oscar list, but it's in a smaller place, and, press are not, as interested. So it's about knowing the festivals and knowing which ones are worthwhile. And then we tend to just do cover one or two festivals in a year. You wouldn't do more than that. So it's really about kind of targeting the right time for the right festival. And I mean, we get, many films, but for us, it's really about, Rob touched on this actually, it's about a short film that grabs you in the first minute. If you've got a 16-minute film, you haven't got 5 minutes to wait to get into the film, and I've seen so many films that are brilliant halfway through, but they've lost me in the first half. And hats off to short filmmakers. It's really, really hard to make a good film when you've got a really good beginning, middle, and end. And it doesn't have to be a big budget. Some of our films that won Oscars, the budget was $5,000. So it's not about necessarily the highest budget. A lot of filmmakers beg, borrow, and steal whatever they can to not have to pay for things. But it's about having a great project. And again, as Rob was saying, a film that you're really invested in as soon as you watch it, a film that you really, again, feel something with, and you just really kind of love the film, and it has to be something that it grips you the whole way through, and something that you're really keen on, and again, but also has to be good cinematography, a great acting. Sometimes I see a brilliant film and someone's cast their friend, and the friend is not a great actor, and that one person spoils it for the whole film. So it's about this kind of lots of elements, but it's about really having a great project that is shot well and is interesting, and you really kind of love it immediately. No pressure, right?
Yeah. And obviously there are a lot of considerations when making a short film. It's not easy. And so to add to that list, what should filmmakers be thinking about during the making of that film, either pre-production or production, that will help them market the film down the line? Is there a checklist of things that they should definitely be gathering and getting ready?
You know what, that's a brilliant question, because I think filmmakers don't think before, about the things they need before they've made the film or when they're making the film. And then afterwards, they then think about the things they need. And, I've seen many, and I'm sure Katie and Rob as well, many, and also Isabel, sorry, not to leave you out, many great films, and then they send me the stills and they look so bad, they're grainy, they don't look good, they're not good quality, and you're like, well, as a publicist, my tools to sell your film are the press release, a trailer if you have one, and great stills. So if you've got a brilliant looking film where the cinematography looks great and you're just in awe of it, and you get these grainy, awful stills, how can I sell it? Because I'm selling it on the pictures. So 100%, I think you should think about as you're going along. I know that there's a lot of things to consider when you're making a short film, but having a stills photographer for me is essential. Having a stills photographer that you can then have great stills to use as publicity afterwards. The other thing that's really worth doing is doing B-roll while you're filming. And you can do this with a GoPro camera. It doesn't have to be, something massive. Getting behind the scenes of the director directing. We had The Silent Child a few years ago that won an Oscar, and they were brilliant because they had filmed the little deaf girl in the auditions right from the start. Everything they did with her, they filmed the director signing, and that was gold dust for us, because we were able to go to TV shows and offer them, great footage. And if you are doing a TV interview, then they'll quite often ask for behind the scenes footage. So it's worth doing that, and also taking behind the scenes pictures. Once the film is finished, again, Rob mentioned this, the synopsis is so important. And I think it's sometimes quite hard to write a synopsis if you've been so close to the film, so I would write it and get someone who's never seen the film to read it and then watch the film and see if it matches. It has to be very short, a couple of sentences and enough, that those few words have got to make you want to watch the film, and that's not easy to write, when you're so close to it. So it's really, really important to have a great, I see Katie nodding, you need to have a great synopsis and also a great poster. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a still, it could be something designed, but these materials are so important. The poster's going to go on IMDb, the stills will go on festival websites or the short of the week. Those things are so important. And I think, if you're new or don't realize, you don't necessarily think about those things before, but just taking the time with them will help so much.
Everyone else might already know this, but I'm going to share it because I only recently found out. But with stills photography, they often, rather than kind of taking the photos as the scene is happening, they often kind of do it afterwards and like recreate the scene, so you can kind of get better light or better angles. And so the stills photographer can kind of get in there as opposed to be stepping around everyone, which obviously on a short film set, you're kind of against the clock. So it's not always possible, but that was something I found quite fascinating. There's not a question there, it's just a statement.
Stills from the film, but they're just never as good quality. They tend to kind of be a bit grainier and not bright. And I mean, often I'm sent stills and quarter of the time I'm saying, can you brighten them? Can you brighten them? They're just really dark. Like the film doesn't look, but the stills are really dark. And I mean, if you really don't have a stills photographer, then you need someone who's really, really good at taking the films from this, stills from the screen and then working on them so they look good. But they don't tend to look as good as if you've had someone. And it's just going to help you in the long run with whatever way you want to go with the film in the promotion if you've got good stills.
Yeah, it's just about carving out the time, isn't it, on set, even in the mania. And then I just want to move on because we've still got a couple of topics to get through. So I want to talk about screenings outside of a festival. So we're coming back to you and Tape. As a collective, you're drawn to films that maybe didn't get the attention they deserved the first time around. So would you say there is hope for a film to get a screening, 5-10 years down the line? And how can filmmakers kind of keep that possibility alive, not let their films sort of go quiet into the night?
Absolutely. When we love those kind of films, we love the kind of films that just disappear. And the reason to why they disappear is because they haven't thought about everything that we've discussed today. And, it's nothing to do about the quality of the film, which is, just going back to good wickedry as well. It's got nothing to do with the quality of film or the work that went into it or the budget that went into it. It's the fact that people are missing these steps. And also just going back quickly to what Catherine was saying in terms of all that material it's important for promotion and marketing, but it's also important for how you position yourself and what message you want to put across, because we might be curating something and we'll acquire the films, we get the films, and then there's no copy and there's no still images, and then we have to make it up, but then the filmmaker might not like that, and so it's really important to have that in place so that you at least can say, well, this is how I'm presenting it. And so it just helps as well confirming the fact that you are a clear filmmaker, that you have intentions, what you're sort of putting forward. With the stuff that we've curated, it's I think just being ready, and this all goes back to the sort of intentions of, what is your intention when you make the film, what is your intention when it's, where do you want it to end up? And so many of the films we're working with, people are so surprised that we've gotten in touch. They've had no intention of actually continuing. There's been some films that have been like, 5 years ago I made it, I submitted to festivals, nobody picked it up, done. So I think definitely have hope, and also just get yourself on the radar for people who do curate short films, because there are people out there who do that beyond online platforms, beyond festivals. And it's just a really good idea. You can start with just sort of filmmaking collectives or various organizations. One thing that we did last year was, so we had a in-venue season, and we made sure that there was a short film screening before every feature film. It's not really something that is a done deal, but you might find, a feature film that sort of is relevant to your short, or just it might be complementing, or if you just sort of do a bit of research in terms of what's out there that you could submit to. We get people getting in touch with us, sort of getting an idea of the things that we do, and they just get in touch and they say, if you do anything around this theme, here's my film. But yeah, I think in terms of, if something happens in 5 to 10 years time, then just have those things ready. I've worked with a few films that they don't have their original files. So they have really sort of grainy files, and we've had to DCP it, or someone's burned in captions that are incorrect. So just these are all things that you want to keep in mind while you're making the film, so it's just really tidy. But yeah, I think in terms of trying to sort of still be seen in a few years' time, you can also look at distributors like Lux or Cinenova, which obviously are more sort of experimental artist moving image, but it's quite sort of worth trying to see if anyone will pick it up, or someone like Tape might pick it up for a special screening, because there are people out there looking for short films to screen.
And then say you do get selected for a special screening, how do you kind of advise people to make the most of that experience? Again, is it about emailing people to try and invite them to that screening? You know, what else can you be doing to kind of, again, extend the lifeline of this short film?
Yeah, and show up and watch the film and invite people. So we are curating 10 special events for LSFF. So this is, you know, most festivals will have a special events section, and we curated something for Estetica as well. So none of these films were submission based. They were all sort of films that we were just curating a special event. Show up, talk about it. Yeah, I mean, there's really, that's all you can do. And I think sometimes filmmakers might, if you've moved on in terms of making films, you've moved on, you know, if you've moved on to the next project and you don't really want to feel attached to this project anymore, that's fair enough. But I think just seeing what, if you're being sort of curated, if someone's curating your film, it's good to know what else they're doing or who they're involved with, and sort of try to just show up and talk about the film and the screenings you've got.
Absolutely. And then I'm conscious of time and obviously wanting to get to people's questions. So I'm going to skip ahead to social media. Rob, I'd love to come to you for this. What do you make of self-distribution? You know, if people will just put their film up on YouTube or Vimeo and then kind of tweet about it, is that a sensible option, or would you advise against that?
I mean, it depends what other options you have, I suppose. It's a sensible option if it's your only option. You know, I guess it just comes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about just making sure whatever your approach is, whichever avenue you go down, just make sure you're prepared. So if you do decide to do self-distribution yourself, just make sure you do a really good job of it. Do as much research as you can, be as prepared as you can. You know, make sure you have exhausted other avenues first. So make sure you do know what options you have before you take that route. And there are lots of kind of more independent filmmakers who go down that route and have, you know, and have great success. There are people who have basically built careers on it, but they are kind of few and far between. So I guess it's just again recognizing what you want from that online release, recognizing what you expect, and then kind of having a look at the examples out there that have maybe done well.
And does it discount people from being on Short of the Week if maybe they have put it up somewhere? You know, can they then take it down and still be eligible?
Yeah, no, it doesn't discount them at all. We featured plenty of films in the past that we've actually just discovered online. So if we see something, you know, we might be browsing. Vimeo's changed a bit now, but back in the day, I used to find a lot of films on Vimeo through my Vimeo feed. So it was films that other filmmakers have kind of shared or liked. Or, you know, sometimes I find films on social media again through my network of contacts that are already online. So yeah, it doesn't discount you from being on Short of the Week at all. You know, if you've got a film out there yourself and you've started to get it attention, then we think that's brilliant, and we're happy to kind of just help that process and champion you.
Good to know. And then Katie and Catherine, I think you'll be best placed to answer this one. How can people best utilize social media to shout about their short film and give it a bit more post-festival longevity?
Well, kind of, if we go step back for the festival circuit, if you do go onto the festival circuit and you do get selections, I am begging you, filmmakers, on behalf of festivals, please promote it. You have been selected and curated from a very big submission pile. You are few selected lovely filmmakers that have been chosen. So the reason I say that is because not only would the festivals really kind of appreciate it, but it's content for you to share later down the line. So therefore, as Rob touched on it earlier, and we always recommend our filmmakers do this, if you have been selected with your film in a festival, once you know when you're going online, get in touch with that festival, because they chose your film because they wanted to support you, and you chose their festival because you wanted to be screened by them. And it's such an easy thing. And also it's a wider reach, especially when it's not necessarily in your own territory. So let's say you have a horror film and you get selected by Saskatoon Fantastic in Canada. When you come to kind of launch it online, you can share it, and they can share it on their Twitter, on their Facebook, or their newsletter, or even on their own website, on their blog. So it's actually kind of, it's twofold really. It's kind of making sure that you have stuff to share on socials at the beginning. What I will say, and this is a slight caveat, and this is our recommendation, because a festival circuit can be really, really slow in terms of when you start submitting and when you start to begin to hear back. What we actually recommend is if you have either production company or a creative name that you're actually creating content under, that you actually utilize that as your handle for socials. Because what that means is that gives you the freedom to talk about the other projects that you're working on without basically trying to harness an audience in one space. And then a short film will inevitably kind of die a death on social platforms at some time. Whereas it's easier to kind of go, well, we've just started submissions for our short film and now we're shooting the next one. And, you know, and then you can drip feed those kind of selections as you go through. So I think it's about understanding what you have to share, but also who you need to tag and who you are talking to. It's quite common for festivals to get in touch, mostly through either Vimeo or through Instagram, when they've seen content that they're actually interested in, and they will kind of drop you a message. That's a whole other topic conversation, but you know, if they are genuinely interested, they'll be reaching out and kind of having a conversation with you rather than just doing a copy and paste, here's 20% discount, send it to us now. So there's definitely a benefit of socials. It's just you don't have to be a master of socials. It's just knowing what you've got and what you've got to shout about, kind of feeding back into this idea of like behind the scenes stuff. The reason we say don't do just one solo page for that short film is because there's only so many behind the scenes stills that you can share in the 5 months that you're waiting to hear back from festivals. So just know that what you've got to share, but also be inventive. You know, if you've got a really interesting crew, you didn't make the film by yourself. You know, there's people to kind of really utilize, and that might even be, you know, just a few quick questions or short video or doing Instagram lives or whatever. But I think you can do quite a lot by doing very little, and it's just kind of understanding what you've got to harness, but really play into the strengths of the films. If you've got a genre film, you know, you've got a captive audience there. Or if you've got a socially issue-led film, you know, reaching out to people who kind of are dealing with that as well, kind of charities or organizations. There's lots of kind of give and take. The one thing I will say is don't do things and expect it really quickly. Like a lot of these organizations and charities appreciate having a sensitivity to kind of approach someone and say, I'm doing this thing way down the line and I want to have a conversation with you now. What they don't want to hear is, I've made a short film, I think you should tweet it next week, because they don't know you. And, you know, they've got to vet it, especially if they're a big organization or charity. They've got to make sure that it kind of aligns with their way of thinking as well. So just a lot like taking time to understand what you've got and how you can utilize it.
Absolutely, some really good advice in there, thank you. And Catherine, did you have anything to add?
Well, actually, Katie covered a lot, but I would just say that, you know, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, that's free marketing for you. So why would you not use it, right? It's a chance to get your audience, you know, to reach your audience. You could take, you know, behind the scenes stills, put a few up. You could do little cameo interviews with some of the cast and the director in like a minute or two, so that, you know, it's kind of great for online. If we work with you, then you can share the press that we're getting for you, and you can tag the publications. We often will share it too. You know, perhaps there's a director that you like, why not tag him or her into what you're doing? It's just, you know, it's, I feel like I work with a lot of most, probably 3/4 of our clients are American, because we have offices in LA and London. And when I'm working with the British clients, they're so shy to promote themselves. It's like this whole thing of like, oh, I don't want to kind of be seen a certain way, but you have to see yourself as a business and your film as a product. So, you know, promote yourself, promote the film, and it's free. So why wouldn't you do something that's free and it can really help you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I want to get on to the audience questions because we have quite a few of them. And Catherine, we have one specifically for you. And that's, how much should a filmmaker budget for a publicity and marketing campaign? Can you put a number on it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, to be honest, it really depends what it's for. If you're going to be, if it's one festival, I mean, we're quite reasonable. I don't really want to talk about figures online, but we're also fair, like, because we know that filmmakers aren't making a short film because they're rich. So if I see a film and it's sent to me and I give a quote and they say, look, I really can't afford that, and I really love the film, I mean, we're passionate about short films because when you see a good one, it's so exciting. So for us, if we give you a quote and you can't afford it, and I love the film or we love the film, then often we'll go down. So it's not set in stone. That's why I don't want to give a fee. And if I really like the filmmaker and I love the film and I want to help them, then often we'll go down for them, especially if it's someone just starting out.
Mm-hmm. And then sticking with like numbers, Rob, I'm going to come to you. Does Short of the Week provide stats to a filmmaker? Like how many views it gets? Is that something you share?
Yeah, we can do. To be honest, not a lot of filmmakers ask for it. We quite often, most of the time when we feature films, they're already on the filmmaker's Vimeo account. So we only host a small percentage of the films that we feature on our own channels, on our own YouTube channel. So most of them will be on their own Vimeo accounts anyway, and then they see the views themselves. So most of those views will be going to their own account. So they'll get those views. We can provide page views and things like that. The only thing I would say in that instance is it's just to be kind of aware it's not all about likes and views and little thumbs up icons. I know it's really easy to get kind of instant gratification from watching that view count go up and watching the likes. And obviously it's a nice thing to have. It is important for an online release, but it's not the be all and end all. We kind of have this opinion that, one view can be as good as 100,000. So it kind of depends on your goals for that film. If it is just reaching a really broad audience, then obviously, yeah, you want to see the view count going up. But if you're looking for an agent or you're looking for feature development or whatever it is, maybe you only get 2,000 views, but one of them is the person who's going to give you your next opportunity, then that view is worth more than all the others.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. And then there's an interesting question here from Alfie Morgan, and he says, are there any ways you should act differently if your film is kind of like a teaser or a proof of concept for a feature film? Do all of these pieces of advice still apply, or should you maybe not invest quite as much in marketing it?
I'll jump in if I can. We work with a lot of films that's what they're made for. They've started off as that. They made it as long as it's a standalone on its own. That's really the main thing. If the film stands alone on its own, if it's a teaser, it doesn't matter. If it kind of doesn't make sense and it goes on to an ending that you don't see, almost like a TV program, then that doesn't work. But I mean, so many of our filmmakers have gone on to make features about the film. So as long as it makes sense on its own, all the rules apply.
Amazing. And then did anyone else have anything to add to that?
The one thing I can tell you is that the 3 words that terrifies programmers is proof of concept. So don't call it a proof of concept. Don't mention that in your synopsis because you shouldn't have to. It should be, as Catherine said, a standalone narrative. We've had clients that have gone onto the circuit with a short film and then haven't realized that actually there is something larger that they want to explore, and it's only because of the response they've had from the circuit that they've gone, actually, yeah, there's a story here that I hadn't quite tapped into, that I didn't realize. Others have made a proof of concept to go on to see if they can garner that experience and that response to kind of prove, well, actually, yeah, this does make sense to make into a feature. Just going back to the synopsis side of things, because it's my special skill in the company is that I can basically write someone's copy for them, because most of the time filmmakers don't really understand or get to grips of what their story is about, because as Catherine mentioned, you're way too close to it. But there's little things like over the 17 years doing it, like we could kind of say logline, it's 1 sentence, and it is generally 25 words and under. Synopsis 40 words and under. The reason we say that is because if you make that as succinct as you can, it means that when a festival like Kerry International Film Festival, where they need a synopsis to be 19, logline to be 19 words, you already have something which is short for you to carve, rather than a festival who can sometimes muller it. So I would say, and little things to save words is like, don't say it's a short film about, we know it's a short film because it's a short film. And we don't need to kind of have the blow by blow accounts, and that kind of feeds into you know, just making sure that you know what your film's about and where it goes, and marketing as well, like knowing what your film's about. It's amazing how many people come to us and I say, you've made a really good sci-fi, and they're like, have I? Yeah, you have.
Yeah, I would absolutely back you up on that about not calling it a proof of concept though as well, especially like when you're looking for short film funding, you know, like people kind of want to see that you've chosen the short film medium because it's suited to that story, as opposed to because you're like, oh, but I just want to get funding for a feature. So yeah, that's definitely a good point to make. And then the really important question here from Ronit is, how important is it to have a trailer for a short film?
Not massively important for the festival selection side of things. Yeah, I mean, your film isn't selected because of a trailer. Your film's selected because of your film. But what I would say is that festivals do like having some trailers to share, and obviously from a marketing perspective it's more imperative, but it's the same as posters. You know, we've got some clients that have done their whole entire circuit journey without a trailer or a poster, but that doesn't detract away from the film. But what you often find is the festival in the rules and regulations will be asking for using up to 10% of your running time, and that's because they create their own trailers or their own teasers. But I will say, obviously from Catherine's perspective, it's a lot more important.
Yeah, definitely. From a PR perspective, you know, I have worked without them, to be honest. But it's better to have one because, again, going back to the materials that we use, you know, we don't want to share the film on, you know, online in an article unless it's already out there. So, you know, our materials are the synopsis, the press release, a still, poster, and if you've got a good trailer, and again, it has to be a good trailer. There's no point in having one that isn't good. But if you've got a really good trailer and you can share that online in interviews and articles, or, you know, for TV, it really gets people more interested in the film. And so from a PR perspective, I would say it's not a must-have, but it's a very, very nice to have.
Okay, good to know. And then I've got a really interesting question here that I'm going to pose to Isra and Rob, someone anonymous. And if they're making a short film in their spare time with their mates and then trying to get that film into festivals, is that a good way to break into the industry? And I think they're kind of worried that maybe they wouldn't be considered because they're, you know, amateur in quote marks, or they're just making it with their films. You know, Isra, like, would you discount someone because they're not kind of technically in the industry, or they're not necessarily calling themselves a filmmaker yet?
I hope not. I hope no one does that. The thing is, the film just has to be strong, and as long as the film is strong, and as long as you put all your efforts into the film, that's all that matters, and that you have a clear vision. And I think even going back to what we were saying in terms of, you know, catching the audience within the first minute, that doesn't mean anything other than setting a tone for what you're about and what your film is about. I can't think of a single situation where someone's gone, oh, but they're not established. Actually, people love up and coming. People love the sentence up and coming. And there's an ongoing conversation in terms of how long do people need to be up and coming for before they get called established? Because I know plenty of filmmakers that have been doing this for 10 years, 5 years. You know, there's those labels don't matter. And there's also a whole other conversation in terms of that kind of classism, essentially, and when do you get to label yourself anything? As soon as you've made a film, as soon as you've sort of thought about film, as soon as you've picked up a camera, you can call yourself a filmmaker. And there's a lot of work going into festivals and platforms to make sure that people who haven't made a film before get seen. And so I think it's, you know, I think there's quite a few filmmakers that people gravitate towards just because they have a track record, up and coming and new voices. Is actually quite interesting. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that.
Amazing. And then Rob, did you have anything to add to that?
I mean, again, it's another pretty perfect answer there, so it's kind of hard to follow. But no, I mean, again, we we would definitely wouldn't discount you. We absolutely love it to see a filmmaker come out of nowhere and kind of blow us away with their vision. If you've seen, if we get to see a film at a festival, that's and we can bring it online, that's fantastic. But if a film that we've never heard of just comes out of nowhere and kind of wows us with whatever it is, story craft, originality, then that's great. I mean, the only thing I would say in that respect is just, make sure you have a little bit of perspective. If you make a film that you think is great and your friends think is great, just try and maybe step back from it, give it a little bit of time, and then rewatch and make sure it is as good as you think.
I'm going to come to you first with a question, because I feel like I've been saying, and can you add anything to that? Quite a lot. So I've got one here that's, what is the value of a Laurel? Is it just for marketing purposes, or are there anything else you can kind of use a Laurel for?
I guess it is mainly for marketing purposes, to be honest. It's kind of, I guess the word I would use is validation. It kind of, it does kind of show that if your film has been selected by a respected festival, that it is more than likely going to be a good film. For us at Short of the Week, festivals aren't everything, but if we see a Laurel from a certain festival that we know we love their curation, then we're instantly going to be like, okay, that's almost got like a stamp of quality to it. I mean, I try not to read too much about a film before I watch it, because I like to go in kind of open and free. But sometimes, if you click on a film and it's got a nice thumbnail, a couple of Laurels on it, you do get a certain expectations from that. Occasionally you're let down, but most of the time, it is like that stamp of quality for you.
And then I'm going to ask one more question before I think we probably should wrap up and let everyone get back to their evenings. And this is one for the group, but what are your kind of thoughts, perspectives on monetizing a short film? Should you try, or is it just simply not worth it because that's not the point of a short film?
Go on, Lisa, go.
I think there should be more of it. I think it's so sad. A lot of money goes into these films. They're not cheap to make just because they're shorter. Budgets are 25,000, 30,000, and I think it's a bit of a shame to just, this is part of the whole conversation, to sort of it just goes nowhere, or it goes somewhere but you can't monetize off it, which is why it's important that if you've then putting a budget aside to actually make the film and the marketing and the festival circuit and try to pay everyone fairly, it's then worth trying to go to like a sales agent or a platform that can pay you. What you won't get your money back, probably, but I think it's worth trying those platforms first, and then, going, okay, I'm not going to get my money back. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think after doing this for so long, there's been so many changes in the landscape, and when we didn't really have the internet on every conceivable device in our pockets and in front of us at all times, selling a short film was more fruitful because there was a guaranteed audience for it. Channel 4 used to commission and screen them, and they were a very prized kind of commodity for broadcasters, whereas now it's very kind of throwaway. Isn't everything in 21st century, but I think I think we've all touched on this tonight, which is, if you do want to go down the monetization route, you are generally kind of looking at a sales agent or a distributor. Now, what I would say is that they are few and far between now. There are some brilliant ones out there, but they are either very boutique, which means they only take on like 5 or 10 projects a year, or they have a really, really particular focus like art house or experimental. And I think it's kind of trying to weigh up like what your film is about and your kind of aesthetic and your narrative themes, and then trying to see if you can find somewhere to kind of sell that, because much like a film festival, a sales agent's going to watch it and kind of go, that's for us, or that's not for us. So it's not something that I would say like is bankable. Like, I wouldn't make a short film with the idea of, I'll do the festival circuit, then I'll launch online and then I'll sell it. Because what you often find is some places are non-exclusive, which means that you can do whatever you want with your film in multiple places, but some of them are more restrictive, and they'll kind of say, like, we had a client sent one the other day, which just red flags all over it, but it was for 7 years. And that's kind of selling your film to somebody for 7 years that you cannot do anything else with that film. And the question is, well, what if you did? What if you did want to do, screening with tape? Or what if you wanted to do, a screening yourself with some other kind of collectives? And I think it's understanding it's not a means to an end. Like, why are you doing it? If it's to get more audience, if it's to get more prestige, if it's to have career conversations, then great. But if it's about kind of trying to get a big amount of cash back for the film, as sad as it is, it doesn't work like that nowadays, which is sad. And I think this is a whole other discussion, but the last kind of 18 months in terms of the pandemic landscape has kind of thrown up this issue of sharing kind of screener fees, or distribution of the monetary value of tickets. And that's something that's a really big divide between Europe and with the US and Canada. But there's no one rule fits all, and every festival is different. So I think it's a very tricky conversation. But I mean, even people that sold their film to sales agents, a couple of years ago, you don't get it. Like, you don't get a lot, and you don't get it often. Like, sometimes you're chasing them. Like, one filmmaker might get like 300 quid after 5 years. It's
how well the film's done, doesn't it? And how far, and each film is different. One thing, sorry to butt in, Katie, but one thing that I think worth thinking about, and people don't realize as well, is the royalties of music. So if you've used royalties in a film, if you used a film that you don't have royalties for in a film, once you sell it, you'll need royalties, and sometimes getting those royalties can be 20 grand, 10 grand, and that makes it not worth even selling, because you'll just have to pay more than you'd probably get back. So that's something to think about maybe when you're making film. Film originally is being careful about the music that you use, just thinking later down the line. Sorry, Katie, Karen. No,
that's true. And we have had circumstances where somebody has paid, not in perpetuity, they've paid for festival rights for 18 months, which means that when they sell it to a distributor, they then have to either kind of try and renegotiate new licensing stipulations, but inevitably they end up just changing the music because it's cheaper. I mean, and also that if you have kind of this is more bespoke and very, very specific, but if you have perhaps use somebody's existing content as well, like if you've done a Dollar Baby short story from Stephen King, you cannot, part of the regulations of you doing that is you cannot sell it for profit, because it's not yours to sell. So there's lots of things to be conscious about.
And then Rob, did you have anything else to add to the kind of monetization debate?
Again, not massively. It's all been covered pretty well there. I guess everyone on this panel would love it if there was more money to be made from short film. It would make all of our lives a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. But the reality is the opportunities are few and far between. So again, just look into them, do your research, know what you're agreeing to. Again, like Katie said, there are platforms who ask for a specific type of exclusivity, and that might mean your film is locked down with them for a while. It might mean any future developments of that film are, kind of under their ownership as well. So just understand the terms and conditions.
Absolutely. I think that's all we have time for. I'm really sorry if we didn't get to your question. There were a lot of them and they were all good ones. I think the key takeaways are kind of know your short film inside and out, and be specific, and one size doesn't fit all. Thank you all so much for joining me and for sharing your wisdom, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. I'm going to hand back over to Alex from the BFI because she has some more announcements and information, and I think the correct dates for the BFI Future Film Festival, I think I gave the wrong ones at the beginning of the talk, so she'll correct me on that. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you to our lovely panelists. That was a really, really insightful conversation. I know I told you at the beginning to switch off your chat boxes, but if you were able to look at it, there's a lot of very grateful filmmakers there. Before you all go, I just wanted to ask you that we would love to know what you thought of today's event. We will share a link to our survey with you through the chat box shortly, and also through an email just after this session. If you could take a couple of minutes to let us know what we can improve on, that would be really great. And this is actually our last lab of the 2021-2022 season. So there won't be any more labs discussions until May. However, we have plenty of other opportunities for you. We have Future Film Festival, which is coming up on the 17th until the 20th of February. It will be a hybrid festival with events both in person, fingers crossed, at the BFI South Bank and also online. And we'll be announcing our film program this Friday, and then the full program will launch on Thursday, the 27th of January. So please keep an eye out on our social channels for these updates on the festival and to be the first to find out when the tickets are on sale. And we also have our new scene season launching this Thursday. We will be talking to filmmakers who have made short films and who are entered the UK film industry in the last few years, who'll be giving you tips and advice on how you can do the same. That's every Thursday at 4 p.m. on our Instagram channel. And if you can't watch live events, you can catch them on IGTV whenever it suits you. Thank you again so much for joining. We hope this was useful. The recording will be on the BFI YouTube channel. It's later this week, towards the end of the week. And have a lovely evening, and we hope to see you at Future Film Festival in February, in person or online, depending on where you're based. Thank you so much, and bye.